Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to our countdown of the top 10 black music groups of the 1970s. We're about to take a trip back to an era where the music was raw, the grooves were infectious, and the artists were pushing boundaries like never before. Get ready to groove to some of the best tunes from an unforgettable era. We're talking about those classic sounds that still get the party started and make you want to move. Let's get it. All right. We gotta start this list off right, and there's no better way than with Earth, Wind, and Fire. These cats were on another level, man. They weren't just musicians, they were messengers, bringing messages of peace, love, and unity through their music. And the music? Forget about it. It was a fusion of funk, soul, and R&B, all held together by Maurice White's incredible vision. Now, when you talk about Earth, Wind, and Fire, you gotta talk about the horns. Those horn arrangements were epic, man. They could make you dance, they could make you cry, they could make you feel every emotion under the sun. And then you had Philip Bailey's voice, soaring over everything, hitting those high notes like it was nothing. September. Come on, man. That song is a timeless classic. It's the soundtrack to every good time. You hear those first few notes, and you can't help but smile. And then there's Boogie Wonderland. That bass line, those harmonies, that energy, it's pure magic. But Earth, Wind, and Fire was more than just hits, man. They were about something real. They were about uplifting people, inspiring them, and reminding them of the power of music. They were true pioneers, and their influence on music is still felt today. Next up, we got the mighty OJs. These brothers were smooth, man. Their harmonies were so tight, so effortless, it was like they were reading each other's minds. But it wasn't just their voices that made them special. It was their lyrics, too. The OJs weren't afraid to tackle real issues in their music. They sang about love, sure, but they also sang about the struggles of everyday life, about social injustice, about the things that mattered to people in the community. Love Train is a perfect example of that. It's a song about unity, about coming together and spreading love and peace. It's a message that's just as relevant today as it was back then. And then there's Backstabbers. Talk about a song that everyone can relate to. It's a cautionary tale about betrayal, about watching out for the people you think you can trust. The OJs were masters of storytelling through song. They could paint a picture with their words, and their voices had this way of drawing you in and making you feel every word. They were true soul men, and their music continues to resonate with generations of fans. Now let's talk about the Spinners. These guys were hit-making machines in the 70s. They had this incredible knack for crafting songs that just got stuck in your head. You know, the kind of songs you could listen to over and over again and never get tired of? I'll Be Around is a perfect example of that. That song is a masterpiece. The way they build up the emotion, the way those strings swell, and then Philippe Wynn's voice, so full of longing and heartache, it's enough to make you melt. And then there's Could It Be I'm Falling in Love. That song is just pure joy. It's impossible to listen to it without tapping your feet and singing along. The Spinners had a way of capturing the feeling of falling in love, the excitement, the nervousness, the pure bliss of it all. But it wasn't just their ballads that were great. The Spinners could also bring the funk. They had this way of blending different genres together, creating a sound that was both familiar and fresh. They were true innovators, and their music continues to inspire artists today. Chapter 4. The Temptations Navigating Change with Soul. Let's talk about the Temptations, man. These brothers were already legends by the time the 70s rolled around. They had defined the Motown sound in the 60s, and they weren't about to slow down. But the 70s were a time of change, and the Temptations changed right along with it. They brought in new members, experimented with new sounds, and proved that they were more than just a one-trick pony. Papa Was a Rolling Stone is a perfect example of that evolution. It's a departure from their earlier, more upbeat material, but it's no less powerful. The song is a sprawling epic, clocking in at over 11 minutes on some versions. It's a story about loss, about betrayal, about the complexities of family, and the way they deliver it with such raw emotion and power, it's impossible not to be moved. The Temptations were masters of their craft, man. They could sing anything, and they could make you feel it in your soul. They were true survivors, and their music continues to inspire and uplift us today. Chapter 5. Sly and the Family Stone. Pioneers of funk and social commentary. Now, we gotta talk about Sly and the Family Stone. These cats were revolutionaries, man. They were one of the first major integrated bands, and their music reflected the changing social landscape of the late 60s and early 70s. Sly Stone was a visionary, a musical genius who blended funk, rock, soul, and psychedelia into a sound that was totally unique and groundbreaking. Family Affair is a perfect example of their sound. It's a song about the complexities of family, about the love and the pain that can exist within those relationships. But Sly and the Family Stone weren't just about making music, they were about making a statement. They challenged racial barriers, they challenged gender norms, they challenged everything that people thought a band should be. They were fearless, and their music was a reflection of that fearlessness. They were a force of nature, and their influence on music is immeasurable. They paved the way for countless other artists, and their music continues to inspire and challenge us today. Chapter 6. The Isley Brothers, masters of versatility and groove. Alright, let's talk about the Isley Brothers. These brothers were the definition of versatility, man. They could do it all. They started out as a gospel group, then they moved into doo-wop, then they went full-on soul, and then they embraced funk like nobody's business. And through it all, they never lost that signature Isley Brothers sound. That Lady is a perfect example of their range. It's a song that's both funky and soulful, with an irresistible groove that just makes you want to move. And then there's Fight the Power. Talk about an anthem. That song is a call to action, a rallying cry for anyone who's ever felt oppressed or marginalized. The Isley Brothers weren't afraid to experiment, to push boundaries, and to try new things. And that's what made them so great. They were always evolving, always growing, always searching for that next level. They were true pioneers, and their music continues to inspire and excite us today. Chapter 7. Kool and the Gang from Jazz to Funk Masters. Now let's talk about Kool and the Gang. These brothers were masters of the groove, man. They started out as a jazz group, but they quickly found their footing in the world of funk. And when they went funk, they went hard. Jungle Boogie is a perfect example of their sound. That song is a straight-up party starter. It's got that infectious beat, those funky horns, and that irresistible energy that just makes you want to get up and dance. But Kool and the Gang weren't just about making people dance. They were about making music that was both sophisticated and accessible. They had a way of blending jazz harmonies and rhythms with funk grooves, creating a sound that was both familiar and fresh. They were true innovators, and their music continues to be celebrated and enjoyed by generations of fans. Chapter 8. Let's talk about the Jackson 5, man. These kids were a phenomenon. They burst onto the scene in the late 60s, and they took the world by storm. Led by the incomparable Michael Jackson, they were a force of nature, a whirlwind of talent and energy. ABC and I Want You Back are just a taste of their magic. Those songs are pure pop perfection with irresistible hooks, infectious grooves, and Michael's soaring vocals. But it wasn't just their music that made them special. It was their energy, their charisma, their sheer joy of performing. They were kids, but they were pros, man. They could dance, they could sing, they could entertain like nobody's business. They were true stars, and their light continues to shine bright today. Chapter 9. Now let's talk about the Empress of Soul, Gladys Knight, and the Pips. Gladys Knight's voice is a national treasure, man. It's powerful, it's soulful, it's full of emotion, and when she sings, you feel every word. Midnight Train to Georgia is a perfect example of her power. That song is a masterpiece. It's a story about love, about loss, about the choices we make in life. And Gladys delivers it with such heart, such soul, it's impossible not to be moved. But Gladys Knight and the Pips weren't just about ballads, they could also bring the funk. They had a way of blending different genres together, creating a sound that was both familiar and fresh. They were true originals, and their music continues to inspire and uplift us today. Chapter 10. Finally, we gotta talk about Parliament Funkadelic, the masters of funk rock. Led by the one and only Dr. Funkenstein himself, George Clinton, they were a force of nature, a cosmic explosion of funk, rock, soul, and psychedelia. Give Up the Funk is just a taste of their madness. That song is a funk anthem, a call to arms for all the freaks and the rebels out there. But Parliament Funkadelic was more than just a band. They were an experience. Their shows were legendary, full of costumes, theatrics, and enough funk to make your head spin. They were pioneers, pushing the boundaries of music and performance art. They were outrageous, they were controversial, and they were brilliant. They were Parliament Funkadelic, and they changed the face of music forever. Woo, that was a trip down memory lane, right? Thanks for joining us on this musical journey through the 70s. We explored the soulful sounds of Earth, Wind and Fire, the smooth grooves of the OJs, and the funk rock fusion of Parliament Funkadelic, just to name a few. These groups weren't just making music, they were shaping a culture, pushing boundaries, and creating a soundtrack for a generation. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more great content. Keep the groove alive.